Basically, so the government, when it sort of took office, right, it had this projection for poverty that it was going to rise significantly, which obviously was kind of driven by the two-child limit, which affects more and more families over time. And so when it's taken the policy action that it has, particularly on the two-child limit and also on free school meals, what it's largely doing is countering that rise in child poverty that we were expected to see, or that modelers were expecting. So what it means that even though we've done all this, and it's great, and like we're really happy with that the government has done all that, it means that the actual poverty rate by the end of the Parliament won't be terribly much lower than when the Parliament started, because of all these kind of positive headwinds that are going on. So in effect, yes, poverty will be down by the end of the Parliament compared to the start of the Parliament, but not actually by a huge amount in terms of number of children. So yes, it's great that they've done it, and that does reduce poverty relative to a world where the two-child limit remains, but the bottom line is that poverty numbers will still be not that much lower. So we do think that the government probably does want to go further if it wants to actually sort of achieve a substantial decrease in the number of children in poverty relative to when it took office. In terms of the forms that could take, I mean, there are lots of options. One, for instance, is that we still have benefit levels which are affected by the decisions of previous governments on freezing and sub-inflationary uprating of benefits, which we could start to slowly undo over time, so that we sort of have increases in things like the child element over and above inflation to try and restore the levels of benefits to where they really should be had those freezes not taken place. I think in particular, if you were thinking about where you would put money in the social security system, the child element is probably the most attractive. Obviously, we sort of see a version of this in Scotland. We have the Scottish Child Payment. You know, that is a top-up of over £100 a month per child at the moment. You know, it's risen significantly since its introduction. It is possible to do this. You know, the government, the Scottish government obviously thought that it was a priority to do so, and it has substantially reduced the poverty rate in Scotland. Maybe not enough to hit their targets, but have a good dent. And also just to say that also allows us, because that has happened in Scotland, and you know, organisations like the Institute for Fiscal Studies have kind of looked for kind of evidence of whether this is affecting work incentives, etc., and they are not finding evidence of that. So it's quite useful that in Scotland we have a situation where the child element is effectively more generous through the Scottish Child Payment, and you know, things are ticking along, the poverty rate has been reduced, and there is probably some learnings there for the UK government in terms of where you might want to put additional investment in social security. Very quickly, I'll just say as well, housing support, like one of the reasons why the poverty rate is kind of in default kind of drifting up over time is that we have local housing allowance that is still frozen at a historic rate. Rents are obviously rising fast. The government has obviously plans to increase the availability of affordable homes, etc., over time. And that's all well and good, but children are here right now and they need that support right now. So basically, the longer we leave that, the more people will experience shortfalls in support in their housing, and that sort of erodes their disposable income. And so that is also another key area where we think actually, you know, the government is pretty comfortable that it should uprate general benefits by CPI. That's kind of taken as a given. It's kind of a collective wisdom. But in housing, for some reason, it's seen as discretionary whether we should increase housing support or not, even though the exact same logic applies. You've got costs rising, benefits should change to reflect those rising costs, and sort of increasing LHA is the way to do that and stop this kind of upwards drift of the poverty rate that we will expect to see over the Parliament if we don't take action.